Hey there, I'm Tom Shields, and on today's Intelligence Report, we're going to talk about the role of the data scientist and how we see an AI-ready, intelligent data infrastructure making them more productive. I got Krish and Russell here with me again to discuss this topic, and I want to frame the discussion with two quotes. We do qualitative surveys periodically, and these are both from data science leaders. First one is AI relies on data. And if you've not done a good job managing your data, you'll be very surprised at how challenging your AI projects are. So that's quote number one. Quote number two is, we aim to build AI models and use tools that increase transparency and auditability around AI decisions. Interesting quote. So paint me a picture of the life of the data scientist. Why do we hear feedback like that? I mean, how can we help those guys get over some of those issues and be more productive? What do you think?
And one of the biggest challenges that when we talk to data scientists that they tend to have is actually just gathering the initial data sets that are required to run either training or inferencing jobs. But where is the data today, and how do they gather it? And traditionally, that's been writing a spec. Essentially, they had to write a spec, a work order that goes into some governance committee, and some folks say yes, that's okay, or no, it isn't, and it ends up with a data engineer. A data engineer spends 2 weeks, building the right pipeline and pulling the data together, et cetera, et cetera. And the reality is that for many of the things that these folks are asking for, we believe in a world where there's a self-service opportunity for them. So what that means is that as a data scientist, I should be able to go into a tool and enter essentially a plain text query that says, gather me the data that meets these specifications. And of course, it has to do that in a way that is understanding of the governance and security environment. Right. So that means what data should this person have access to, but also has an understanding of the regulatory environment. So where there are restrictions that on the types of data, it could be personally identifiable information, health information obviously would be the most typical ones, but there's actually quite a few other pieces that would fall into that. Is it giving you the data in a way that firstly, you're allowed to access it, that it's curing data where data is protected and can't be used for the way you want to use it. And then understanding once that data set's created, where can that data set go? How can it be used? How can it be managed and being tracked through the various workflows that they're trying to run through?
Right. Krish, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I actually like how Russell approached this one. So let me add couple of things to it, right? So when you think about what are the industries where the AI workflows are being very successful and data scientists are converting the data into insights in a faster fashion, they're mostly regulated industries, the financials, the healthcare. And the reason why they do that is they have a better understanding of their data. They understand the governance of the data. They understand their regulatory and policy posture of the data. So the data scientists in these industries, we see them, get to their projects faster and productionize them. But our challenge is now, how do you do that across all the industries? And this is where some of the tools Russell was talking about come in and be very handy, right? The ability to explore the data, understand the data, like in a very natural way, to be able to ask and do semantic searches so that, you can just ask and talk to the data to be able to know which data to use, and the existing posture and regulatory and compliance restrictions placed on the data becomes really, really important, right? So to me, the way I look at it is take the learnings from the places where, the transformation is faster, the data to insights are happening faster, and build a toolkit that takes it and democratizes it for all the other industry verticals. So that's kind of how I think about the governance and the ability to talk and explore the data.
And I'll just layer some, Krish made some really good points there. I'm going to layer something on top of this, right? Which is that this isn't about, data isn't neatly stored in one place, right? I mean, I wish, I'm sure most organizations would love that to be the case, and it absolutely isn't the case. It's especially not the case when it comes to unstructured data. It's especially not the case. And that could be many different places on premises. It could obviously incorporate cloud. I mean, it depends where the data is being generated, how it's being used, et cetera, et cetera. Some of the big challenges that have permeated this space in terms of bringing this data together And the reason why people have had to use data engineers in the past is that it isn't in one place. You're not querying one system. So we actually believe that there should be something that sits kind of, a consistent view of your data wherever it may sit. Again, different systems on premises, in the cloud, without the need to go and replicate it and bring it all into some new system, right? So the idea of being able to manage and use that data in place is really, really critical. And simplifying that experience for the data engineer. Every time you want to create a new data set, having to ask someone to manually go do that, that's a problem. So I think that's a huge way to improve the productivity and effectiveness and time to value for data science.
So I'm going to ask a provocative question here.
Go on.
Are we going to eliminate data engineers?
No, absolutely not. But listen. I mean, across all of these roles, if we can make them more productive, more efficient, I think that as I say, it doesn't just make it better from a time to value perspective. Honestly, it helps in retention. It helps keep these folks engaged in the companies that they work in. They hate doing infrastructure work. I don't blame them.
Yeah, I actually like how you got into what does it mean to make a data scientist be more efficient, right? It's about ensuring that they're spending all their valuable time on things that matter, which is like insights. Like that's where the business value is created. But if they are spending all their time understanding data or understanding security and policy posture of the data, trying to know what's okay and not okay from governance standpoint, then that's the valuable time that's getting wasted, right? I think one of the things Russell talked about, which is a core principle we use as we build these services, is that security, privacy, governance, these things have to be foundational. If you do them at the top layer, that's kind of where the inefficiencies creep in, right? So doing this in a very foundational way for us is how we unlock that efficiency for data scientists so that they focus on what's most important for them and not have to worry about, the underlying lineage of the data, quality of the data, the permissioning models of the data, the compliance postures of the data.
So we're talking about giving them confidence to move faster.
Absolutely.
I love that phrase, confidence. I think that's incredibly important. I mean, when I go talk to, and we all talk to data scientists, and when we go talk to them, they're not intrinsically interested in the world of governance, but that doesn't mean that they don't care about it. They're very aware that the decisions they make and how they manage and use data have serious implications for the organizations that they work for, the ones that, not being funny, write their paycheck, right? And they don't want to do anything wrong. And in fact, some folks think that creating these sandboxes might actually slow things down. Actually, my experience talking to data scientists actually speeds things up because they feel freer. They can go do what they want to do in the knowledge that there are systems in place that were going to prevent them doing something silly that puts the company at risk. And that could be illegal. There could be legal peril. It could be regulatory. And it's a very quickly evolving environment. So, we've seen a whole bunch of new regulations come in this year, like the AI Act in the European Union, as an example. We can't expect a data scientist to keep up to date with all that stuff.
What needs to be in place under the hood to make that work for the data scientist, to be able to query the data and get a result back that they know is compliant, secure, allows them to feel confident?
I'm actually going to flip the persona a little bit to see we can get to that one faster, right? We spend a lot of time talking about data scientists, but it's the data protection officer who really worries about the security posture, compliance posture of the data, both in the case of where it stays today, but also as it moves through the AI workflows, as it moves through the training workflows, inferencing workflows. So for you, what you have to do foundationally is that ensure that the DPOs are confident with the end-to-end solution that as the data moves through this, ecosystem or workflow, the data continues to keep and maintain its current posture. If you can give that confidence to the DPO gets out of the way, and all of a sudden, data scientists become a lot more efficient because they get to focus on the things that they love.
Right. And the more experiments they can do and get to a better outcome faster, it seems really logical that this would speed up the work and lead to better business outcomes over time.
And Chris highlighted something absolutely critical, which is that one of the major reasons that these projects don't evolve from being a POC to something in production is because the DPO gets in and says, well, you might have been able to do that in that sandbox over there, but if you think I'm using live customer data like that, you've got another thing coming. There aren't the controls in place. I'm worried, et cetera, et cetera. So again, being able to give that confidence to the DPO that actually it's foundationally managed, right? There's no sort of site, there's no way of getting to the data another way because it's actually being done at the storage level. It is actually, I think, where we're going to see the industry move as a whole.
Right. That sounds empowering. So talk to me about how these capabilities that we're thinking about are going to become embedded in the tools that a data scientist use. Everybody's got their tools they like to use. How can we, imbue those with some of this functionality?
Yeah, I think it's really important to note that data scientists have a set of tools that they tend to use, and there's a bunch of open source tools. MLflow, Jupyter Notebooks would be a good example as well. There's a whole bunch of commercial products and services. Hyperscalers have a bunch of services as well that play this MLOps role. But it's important to note that that's where they're spending their time, right? They're not interfacing with infrastructure. They don't want to talk to the infrastructure, the folks, frankly. But there's clearly a number of the things that we're talking about are capabilities that make their lives better, right? And it could be simple things like data movements, right, or the ability to take data to an accelerated compute environment that isn't on premises, or to as you manipulate the data and creating new data sets, cloning and snapshotting the data, et cetera, et cetera. These all sound like sort of pretty typical storage data management type things. But the problem is they're kind of locked away. They're kind of stuck at the infrastructure layer. So how do you actually get access to that as a data scientist in a way that feels kind of authentic to the way they work on a day-to-day basis? It's not presented as a way of managing data. It's more like data set management is how I would describe it. So we want to work and integrate with these tools and services so that it's just directly integrated into their day-to-day workflow. And they get the benefit of this accelerated, more governed, a more efficient approach. And typically what that really, how that impacts data scientists, it just means that they tend to do things quicker. So rather than having to sit there waiting for a data set to copy from A to B, it happens instantly, or it's cached instantly. When they're looking to iterate on a data set and want to go back, they don't have to wait for a restore of a large data set. It's just available to them instantly. And they're doing it without running out of space because all of this stuff is done from a very space efficient perspective. So I think those are the sorts of things that are meaningful to data scientists, even though they're really infrastructure under the scenes. And if we can present those in a way that's purely integrated into their day-to-day data science workflows, I think that's super impactful.
I really love this notion of, hey, take that existing dataset management capabilities and toolkits you have and integrate it with the ecosystem that the data scientists are familiar with, so that they don't have to think about these underlying capabilities. For them, if the unit is, hey, I want to version the model, it stays as versioning the model. It does not matter that, underlying Domino Data Labs is triggering a workflow that actually takes a snapshot of the data, snapshot of the model, putting it all together, versioning it. That's something that a data scientist does not have to worry about. They can use the tools that they're familiar with and be confident that, it's actually doing what they expect it to do.
And listen, I mean, you mentioned Domino. I think that's a really good example of something that we announced at our Insight user conference this year. And we have integrations with other open source tools as well as critically cloud services, right? Across each of the three main hyperscalers, we've actually integrated our the 1P offers that are offered by the hyperscalers into those native tool sets. So I think the reality is we're not going to predicate which tooling these folks use. We think it's going to be a mix of open source, commercial, service type stuff. We're committed to making sure that our endpoints are integrated within each of them.
Fantastic. This is great stuff. Powerful. So we've heard a lot about how we're going to empower the data scientists to work faster, and how we're going to embed some of this capability into the tools that they already use. And what could be better than that?